So Marie Howe is one of my absolute favorite contemporary poets, and uh, she's got a book that's just out, a selected poems volume that's just out that is beautiful, really, really handsomely made, and the poems that she writes. Well, I say it makes a handsome segue precisely because what Marie Howe wants to do is write a line that looks and sounds, on first encounter, it sounds prosaic. But in her best poems, there will be sort of luminous detail, a turn in the poem that helps us when we go back and reread it. Everything that seemed pedestrian and plain and prosaic lifts up and becomes part of a constellation of meaning. It starts to shine beyond itself, right? So she's a poet for whom the sacramental nature of reality is essential to understanding her project. She doesn't use traditional forms. She rarely will use a rhyme. She writes these long lines that often sound like prose, but the idea informing Marie Howe's poems is that even in the seemingly mundane, in the seemingly prosaic, in the seemingly pedestrian and boring, that there is still grace, that there is still beauty. God as the ground of all being. One of the transcendent attributes of God is beauty, and there is beauty in being if we see it, if we open our eyes to see it. And what her poems want to do is to help us to see the beauty in the everyday, that conjunction of the infinite and the finite that Baudelaire would recognize. And so in some ways, she's really an ambitious technician. In fact, to understand her poems, we have to understand this technique. Otherwise, it just looks like some lines, but there's ingenious form to these poems, even though they're not using regular meter or rhyme. So I'll close with this poem called Prayer. Every day, I want to speak to you. And every day, something more important calls for my attention. The drugstore, the beauty products, the luggage I need to buy for the trip. Even now, I can hardly sit here among the falling piles of paper and clothing, the garbage trucks outside already screeching and banging. The mystics say you are as close as my own breath. Why do I flee from you? My days and nights pour through me like complaints and become a story I forgot to tell. Help me. Even as I write these words, I am planning to rise from the chair as soon as I finish this sentence.
Nice. Nice.
That space that I was talking about earlier, right? To speak with
Right.
God, to rehearse what's happening in our lives, to think about what we're doing and why we're doing it, to think about what we want, what we desire, whom we are serving with our actions every day. Those spaces for reflection and meditation are essential. And not just for Catholics, for everyone. We need these spaces to cultivate an inner life. When we don't have these, our lives become stories we forgot to tell. And we're just sort of swept along by whatever, advertisers or influencers, are filling our minds. And sentence there is sort of doubly loaded. As soon as I finish this sentence,
Mm-hmm.
the
Yeah.
sentence at the end of the poem, but also this punishment.
Hmm.
this punishment we impose on ourselves, doing things that we don't want to do.
Mm-hmm.
Why do we do them? Obviously, there's some things that we have to do that we don't want to do, but behaviors that we know, uh, are not good for us, and people just go back to doing them.